Their book, The Barefoot Spirit, chronicles the history and lessons learned building the popular Barefoot wine brand. So without further ado, please give a warm welcome to these amazing entrepreneurs.
Thank you, David. That was very nice.
I have a mic.
Just put it back there.
Thanks, David. Okay. First of all, I want to say that I'm happy to be alive today to take in this incredible spectacle of the future of the economy of the United States right here in this room. Give yourself a big round of applause. Simply amazing. You know, when Bonnie and I started Barefoot Wine, there was very few schools of entrepreneurship.
Like
Now-
none?
Like one.
None?
Like none. And now they're throughout the country and they're popping up like popcorn, and we're really happy to see that the country's finally coming to its senses. We've always invented our way out of every depression, every war, every downturn, every recession. How did we do that? We started in our garages, we started in our laundry rooms, okay? Started in some warehouse somewhere with some idea and a whole lot of passion and a whole lot of determination. And that's what makes this country great. And you are the future. So we're very happy to be here today and come to your great city of Chicago, one of our favorites next to San Francisco, of course, and visit you guys and give you a little bit of our experience, and we hope that you find it enjoyable. So I'm going to turn it over to the boss right now, and she'll let me know when I'm allowed to speak to you.
Well, you've probably heard a lot that you want to follow your passion. Follow what you're passionate about, and the money will come to you. The opportunities will come to you. We all have opportunities. It's just a matter of whether we take advantage of them or not. They are with us every day. Now, maybe you think that you don't have enough money to take advantage of your opportunity. Maybe you think you don't have enough industry experience to take advantage of an opportunity that comes your way. But we're going to be talking more about that in a little bit. When you do have an opportunity that you decide that you want to take advantage of, you follow your opportunity passionately. So that is what we did. We had an opportunity that pretty much fell into our laps. Michael and I live in Sonoma County. That's the wine country in Northern California, just about an hour north of San Francisco, and right in between Napa County and the Pacific Ocean. It's a beautiful place. We moved there because we loved the area. We have redwoods, beautiful recreational areas, lots of parks. We love to hike. So that's why we lived in Sonoma County, the wine country. But we didn't live there for the wine. In fact, we were not even wine drinkers when we started our business in the wine industry. Pretty surprising, isn't it? I found wine to be intimidating. We started in 1985, and there's a few of you people here that may remember that wine was pretty stuffy at the time. It was all in French, hard to pronounce. I don't speak French. I could not pronounce the names on the labels. But I had a client. Michael and I were both working with clients in the wine industry, in the wine country. I had a client who was a grape grower. And after being with him for a short period of time, helping him to organize his office and his books and such, I saw that he hadn't been paid for his grape harvests for 3 years in a row. He was a new vineyard owner. His grapes came to fruition. He sold them to a winery. He was so happy to have a home for his grapes. Yes, he had a home for his grapes, but he wasn't paid for his grapes. And it was in the mid-six-figure number. So this was a serious concern. And I asked Michael if he could try to go out to the winery and collect the funds that were owed to my client. That was more in his line of consulting. He worked with contracts and worked with business people and the government to set up things. And he also had been working on the edge of the wine industry with clients, but not in the industry, so we didn't have that as a background. But I knew that he was a very intelligent man and that he would look at the picture 360 and see what it was that he could do. So I sent him off to what was then called Souverain Winery. It's now Francis Ford Coppola Winery. And I said, Michael, go collect some funds for my client.
So it's all her fault. That's why Barefoot's here. I was quite content working with my clients in my consulting business, but no, I get yanked into the wine industry. So I go to this bankrupt winery, and when I walk in the door, that's the first thing I find out, is that they filed a Chapter 11. There was really no chance for our client to get paid. And, you know, I'm looking at this board of directors, and they're all the secured creditors. These are all farmers that have taken over the winery, and they're busy selling off equipment to pay their bill. And I thought, well, this thing's going south in a hurry. What am I going to do here? So I walk over to this window, and I look out this window, and I see this thing that looks like a handball court. It's kind of 2 stories below me. And in the middle of this handball court is this thing that looks like a chrome locomotive. It's big, shining. It's got a track. I said, excuse me, guys. I said, what's with a chrome locomotive in the handball court? They said, oh, no, that's not a handball court. That's a clean room, and that's not a chrome locomotive. That's a bottling line. That's a machine. I said, really? I said, does it work? They said, yeah, it does about 3,000 cases a day. I said, really? I started getting an idea. Took a look out the other window, and I saw this row of tanks. I said, what do you got in those tanks? They said, oh, we got bulk wine. We got Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc. I thought to myself, isn't that interesting? That's exactly the product that was sold to you by our client that you had paid him for. So then it hit me like a chrome locomotive, and I said, listen, instead of paying my client money, why don't we do this? Why don't you take some of that wine and run it through that machine down there and bottle it up for us, and we'll clear the debt for goods and services. And they said, okay. CFO signed off on it. So I go back to Bonnie, and I'm really happy, you know. I think, geez, I've solved this problem, you know. So I say, hey, Bonnie, guess what? I think I've solved the problem. She says, oh, do you have $300,000? I said, no. I said, but I got wine and bottling services.
I says, what are we going to do with that? That's not going to pay any bills. So it didn't take too long to figure out that what we really had to do was to come up with a label and sell it in the marketplace. So we thought, well, we can sell it to the chains. We'll come up with a label, sell it to the chains, pay off the grower, and maybe put a couple bucks in our pocket and, you know, move on. How hard could it be? What will it take? Maybe 3 or 5 years? Well, it took 20 years before we were really successful with the product. So the story that we're going to share with you in the book, The Barefoot Spirit, and here today, is really not a get-rich-quick story. It's a get-rich-slow scheme, okay? It's going to take a lot longer to be successful than you think, and it's going to take a lot more energy. It's going to take a lot longer and more money, so you want to be prepared for that. It's a lot of hard work. So when we started, we had the facility that was doing the bottling, and they were going to store all the product, etc., but we did need a business office. And as we've said, we started off without any money. We started off in debt. We assumed the debt from my grower of $300,000, and we started with the bulk wine and the bottling services, but we needed an office, a business office. Well, we couldn't afford to go out and rent one, so we looked around where we were living, which was a farmhouse in Sonoma County, and we said, well, we've got some extra room here in our laundry room. We could put an office. We had extra room there because we couldn't afford a washer and dryer. Okay, so we'll use that. We went into the old barn that was behind our house, and we found a door, cleaned it up, put it on 2 sawhorses. That was our first desk. And that's how what is now the #1 wine brand in the nation, that's where we started. Is that kind of encouraging for a few of you out there, I hope? Okay. We also needed some help. To start with, it was just me and Michael. Fortunately, the grape grower was also an award-winning winemaker, so we had the winemaking services as well. Very fortunate for us, as we not only knew nothing about wine, but we knew even less about winemaking. We invited my nephew to come stay with us, which he did. He could drive a truck. We had him driving around to get whatever we needed. We invited my mother to come and live with us. So his mother-in-law was living with us for 7 years. Very sweet woman. She contributed a lot to our success. We looked for assets wherever we could find them. And there was so much that we didn't know that we went out to ask questions of people in the industry. I had to find out all about bottling supplies, which is the glass, the corks, the foils. And because I knew absolutely nothing, you can believe I had a lot of questions. So I asked a few of the companies that were supplying these products to wineries, and most of them didn't want to talk to me at all. But I did find one company that talked to me, and that was called California Glass. And fortunately for me, they had all the products that I needed, the glass and the corks and the foils, all in one company. So because they worked with me and they answered my questions, we ended up doing business with them for 15 years. So whether you're asking questions or whether you're answering questions, you're building a business relationship. 15 years was a long time to be working with one company. They became a strategic partner for our company. And you'll find as you go along that you want to work with strategic partners. And who are strategic partners? How are they identified? It's the companies or the individuals that will grow and benefit as you grow. When you become more profitable, they become more profitable. And you want to be looking out for those kind of people and communicate with them. Let them know what your goals are. Let them know what your problems are. And ask a lot of questions. So I found what we needed, along with getting all the compliance and all the licenses that were required to bottle a controlled substance, alcoholic beverage. Michael went into the marketplace, and he had some interesting discussions in the marketplace, didn't you, Michael?
Yes, I did. First of all, it was very hard to get an appointment with the top buyer for the biggest store in California. He had over 200 stores. He was the largest buyer of wine in the state of California at the time. The chain then was called Lucky Stores. His name was Don Brown. He was not a happy camper. In fact, he didn't even want to see me. And it took me like 6 or 7 tries just to get an appointment to talk to this guy, because he knew that I wasn't one of his regular vendors, so he was doing me a favor. So I said, come on, Don, you got to give me a shot. He says, okay, be here Monday morning at 9 o'clock sharp. 9 o'clock sharp, I was there. Guess what? I was sitting in the hall for 2 hours. That's what he made me do. Finally, the door opens. His secretary says, Don will see you now. And as I walk by her, she says, you better make it fast. He's not in a good mood. I thought, this guy's never in a good mood. So I go in there, and he's kind of a grumpy guy. He doesn't even look up. He's writing the whole time. He's just like this. He goes, yeah, Houlihan, sit down. Tell me what you got. Just like that. Doesn't even make eye contact. I said, well, Don, what I've got hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of bulk wine and bottling services. We've got a client who's owed money by this winery that went bankrupt, and it's all we could get was wine and bottling services. We'll give it to you any way you want. How would you like it? He says, wow. He says, nobody's ever asked me what I want. Everybody's always told me what they had. But since you asked, I'll tell you. He says, get out a notepad. It's going to be fast. I get out my notepad, and he says, okay, here it is. He says, I want a salt and pepper act. He says, I want it to be better than Bob and cheaper than Bob. and I want you to put it in a pig. You got all that? And I'm writing this down, salt and pepper, pig, Bob. I'm going, what kind of language is this? And then he says, all right, get out of my office. And I get about halfway out the door. He says, you can do that, right? And I said, yeah, I can do that, no problem. I had no idea what he was talking about. Get about halfway down the hall. He says, oh, and Houlihan, one more thing. He says, don't make it a leap, okay? And don't make it a valley. Don't make it a chateau. He says, make the logo the same as the name. Put it in plain English so she can see it from 4 feet away when she's pushing her cart by the wine aisle. He says, you got all that? And I said, yeah, thanks, Don. I wrote all that down. And I thought, boy, I probably just got a master's degree in wine marketing in about 50 seconds if I can ever translate this stuff. So I went to my friend, Hampton Bynum, that I've known for years. His dad was in the wine business. And I said, Hampton, would you translate something for me? He says, sure, what do you got? I said, well, what is the Salt and Pepper Act anyway? He says, oh, that's easy. He says, that's like a red and a white, a pair, like Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc. I said, that's perfect. That's what we got. I said, tell me, who's Bob anyway? He says, oh, Bob? He says, that's Robert Mondavi. I went, oh, great. Got to be better than Robert Mondavi. Got to be cheaper than Robert Mondavi. That's a tall order, but we did have some great wine from Alexander Valley. So I said, just pray tell me one last thing. What is a pig? He says, oh, pig? He says, that's the big fat bottle of wine. It's twice the size of a standard 750 milliliter. It's the 1,500 milliliter 1.5 Magnum, the fat one. It's a pig. I said, really? I said, so this guy has told me something about the distribution system that I would have never found out about had I invented something and then come and tried to pitch him with it. Because I went in there with a degree of humility and fear, he told me exactly where the niche was, where there was a vacancy. And it turned out to be not only in his store, but in every supermarket and box store across the country at the time. So we knew that if we created a product that was in a 1.5 liter bottle, and it was a red and a white varietal, and it was priced about the same price as Robert Mondavi red and white at the time, which would be about $9.99 in today's market, that we would have a product that would fit in the set. That's really important, because a lot of people come up with great ideas, but they have no idea how to get them to market. And I want to tell you something. You're going to hear this over and over again. Distribution trumps everything. Trumps your price, trumps your quality, trumps your cute slogan, trumps your cute logo. It trumps everybody who endorses your product, because if it ain't there, they can't buy it. So let's think a little bit more about distribution before we walk away from that drawing board next time. So here we had this formula that was given to us by a major buyer. We thought, gee, if we do this, it's a slam dunk. We really will take these bottling services and these supplies and run them through the chain store, get the money, pay our client, we'll put a few bucks in our pocket. Well, one of the things he said was, he said that he thought that the name should be the same as the logo, and it should be in plain English. So what do we do about that, Bonnie?
Well, I was really happy to hear it had to be in English, because I wanted to be able to pronounce every word on my own wine bottle. So that was a good idea. We started asking more questions. We went to the bottling line manager, and I said, well, what do you think our label should look like? And he said, well, I'm no expert, but I've got this room back here of all the labels that we've bottled. This winery, Souverain Winery, had done a lot of custom bottling. He said, I'll show you all the labels that have come through this bottling line. I'll show you which one we bottle over and over again and which one we didn't. And you can see for yourself how you might use this information to create a label. So he showed us the ones that didn't bottle very often, and they had all these squiggly, curly Q lettering on them that you really couldn't read. They were in like a dark paper, very, not very bright and cheerful. And the ones that did bottle quite frequently, They had a white paper background that was on all of the edges, was something that was very clean and easy to see in the middle. He said, you know, when you've got a label that you're designing, you're going to design it on a flat surface. But when you put that label on a bottle, it's on a curved surface. So the edges are kind of going to the edge of the bottle, and you're not really going to be able to see it. So you want to keep that in mind. Of course, that hadn't occurred to us before. That was a good information. He said the white along the edge of the label, it's a good to be there rather than a color, because on the bottling line, when the girls take the bottle, which all the women were on the bottling line on this side of the barrier, when the women take the bottle and put it into the case, the cardboard dividers can scuff the edge of the label. If it's colored all the way to the edge, you're going to scuff that color and you're going to see the white paper under it. That's going to make it look like your product is damaged. Now, the product is the wine, which wouldn't be damaged, but the perception of the consumer is that it's a damaged product if it's got a scuff on it, and they're not going to want to buy it. It's very good information for us. So that's what we did. We decided, okay, we'll put a white edge on the paper. We won't use anything curlicue, and we'll make sure that it's got an image that will jump out, same thing that Don Brown had told him. So we started looking around at what kind of a label we might use. Now, going back to Michael's friend, and mine as well, Hampton Bynum, his father had been in the industry for a number of years, so he was second generation. They had a product when they first started out called Barefoot Bynum. And we thought, well, barefoot, that's the way that grapes were first crushed to go into wine. I said, well, that's cute. It's easy to pronounce. Okay? The logo will be the same as the name. That works. So we bought the rights to use the name Barefoot on a wine bottle. But his label was, it was horizontal. It didn't have any life to it. You could just put a tag on the toe and send it back to the morgue. So I said, well, we're going to give it some life. We're going to make it look like it's got a lot of action. It's stepping up. So we put it at an angle like this. I said, we're going to put the words barefoot right into it. Like I saw it one night. We'd come home from a late dinner party. It was about 2 in the morning. And I said, Michael, I know what the label looks like. I can see it stacked in the chain stores. This is going to sell a lot of wine. I said, go to the blackboard. I want you to write it out.
I said, can't this wait till morning?
I pointed to the clock. I said, it's 2 a.m. It's already morning. So he drew it out. The foot and the big words barefoot that came into it. The next morning we put it on some paper and sent it off to our artist in Hollywood. And she came back with these kind of clunky looking feet, her first initial sketches of how we might draw the barefoot label. I said, no, that's not going to do it all. I said, what I'm looking for is a long, slender foot with a high arch. And she said, well, I'm really a visual person. I'm an artist. You're going to have to send me a picture. Okay, send her a picture. Where am I going to find a long, thin foot with a high arch? I said, I've got one of those right here on the end of my leg. So I sent Michael out to get the biggest ink pad he could find. I put my foot in the ink pad, put it on the artist paper, sent it off to the artist, and she created the barefoot label. And that's how my foot ended up on the label of the fastest growing wine in the nation. So we had a label, we had the bulk wine and the bottling services. It was time to go to production. At Easter of 1986, we produced the first barefoot wines. It was Cabernet Sauvignon and Sauvignon Blanc, but still those words are too hard to pronounce. So we called it Barefoot Cab and Barefoot Blanc. And we were so proud. It was Salt and Pepper Act, red and white. It was in 1.5 liter, that was a pig. And it was Alexander Valley fruit at the same price as Robert Mondavi. So Michael went back to Don Brown to present our wines.
So I got another appointment. It took me another week or two to get the appointment, and I waited out in the hall for the mandatory 2 hours, and I finally, got the audience with the Pope, and I walked in, and I was so proud of myself. I had the first 2 bottles of Barefoot in the world, and I put them down on his desk, and he didn't even look up. And I said, "There you go." I said, "It's just what you asked for. It's a salt and pepper act. It's the same price as Bob. It's the same quality. And look, it's in a pig. And the label, you can see it from 4 feet away. The name is the same as the logo. How many truckloads do you want?" He just looked at the bottle like this. He didn't say anything for a while. You could have heard a pin drop in that office. Turns around, he looks at me and he says, "Are you crazy?" He says, "I can't sell this. This wine here, look at this. You put a foot on it. Nobody's going to buy this wine. It's got a foot on it. Wine is serious business. You can't have fun with wine." I said, "But Don, we bottled it all up for you. We were sure that you were going to take this. We gave you everything you want." He goes, I know. He says, "But nobody knows this brand. It doesn't matter how good it is. It doesn't matter how cute it is. It doesn't matter how catchy the slogan is. Get barefoot and have a great time. Doesn't matter." He says, "Nobody knows this." He says, "If you want to spend $200,000 in advertising, I'll put it in my 250 stores." I said, "But Don, I don't even have one of those 200,000. What am I going to do?" He says, "I guess you're going to have to sell it to every corner grocery store and every independent mama papa, door to door, until you make this a household name, at least in California, and then I'll put it in." I said, "But Don, that's going to take years." He said, "That's right, you better get started." So I went out and I hit the bricks, and I'm selling it to every little mama papa. And it wasn't long before I found out they had the same problem that Don Brown at the big supermarket had. They said, "Well, I'll put it in, but if it doesn't sell in 30 days, I'm going to discontinue it and I'll never bring it back. That'll be the end of Barefoot. It'll have a reputation of being a no-seller, a non-starter, a slow mover." So I thought, oh boy, we can't advertise. We don't have enough money to advertise. What are we going to do? About that time, we get a telephone call from a guy in Chinatown in San Francisco. He's a neighborhood association. And he calls up and he says, "Hi," he says, "you're a wealthy winery owner." He says, "We need $100,000 to buy some equipment for our park for the kids after school. Why don't you just write us a check?" And I thought, wow, pal, you got the wrong number. I don't even have one of those $100,000. But what I do have is I have wine. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some wine, and maybe people will loosen up and write you a check at your fundraiser. Maybe you can use it to auction off and take the money and buy some equipment with it. I don't know, it's all I got. He says, "Okay, we'll take it." So I didn't hear from him again. About a month went by, and I finally got a report from our distributor in San Francisco, where I had placed all these wines in all these stores. And the stores that were around the Chinatown area showed a marked increase in Barefoot sales. They were going through the roof. And we said, wow, look at this. Maybe we've blundered onto something here. Maybe we've blundered onto something that works as good or better than advertising. Because these are the members of that neighborhood association who, by the way, are also the shoppers at that store. We called it worthy cause marketing. And we decided that maybe we'd try this idea out in other neighborhoods. So we went to neighborhood after neighborhood and we found out what was important to them, what they were talking about, what they thought was important. Beyond the mercantile value of the wine, it had to do with their livelihood. It had to do with their environment. It had to do with things like rights. It had to do with a lot of different worthy causes. So after group, in city after city, we supported them. And we supported them with wine, and we supported them with our own staff who would go and help them set up and break down for their events. We got involved. We took their causes and put them on little signs on our bottles in the marketplace to advertise their cause and to help them raise funds. So when they had a choice of what consumer product they were going to buy, they chose ours. Why? Because we were part of their group. So this is going on throughout California, and we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So one day, I'm walking down the street in Santa Clemente, California, and I see a sign on a door, and it says, Surfrider Foundation. And I thought, Surfrider Foundation, that's interesting. I should go talk to those guys. You know, we're barefoot. They're barefoot. So I knock on the door, and the door just kind of opens up, and I look in there, and here's this guy. He's wearing these baggy shorts and, Huarache sandals at the time, and a T-shirt, and he's got a surfboard on the wall. He's on the phone. And he goes like this, sit down, sit down. So I come in, I'm wearing a suit and tie because I've been out kissing butt all day trying to sell wine in Los Angeles. And I sit down there, and I'm like a fish out of water. And he gets off the phone, and I said, is this the Surfrider Foundation? He says, you got it. He says, the international headquarters. I said, well, how many people you got? He says, oh, we got 2 or 3 chapters. He says, but we're going to get bigger. Our goal is to have a chapter in every town in the United States and throughout the world that has a beach. I said, wow. I said, well, we're Barefoot Wine, and you wouldn't want to step on a piece of glass in your barefoot. You wouldn't want to step in a polluted ocean in your barefoot. So maybe we can work together. He says, well, how are you going to do that? I said, well, maybe we can help raise funds for you. What are you doing? He says, we have this Blue Water Task Force. We're creating these Petri dishes, and we're giving them to the surfers, and we're having them expose them under the ocean in the water, close them up, and by the time they get to our lab, we can tell what kind of bacteria is growing on the dish, and we know where the pollution is occurring, we know what kind of pollution it is, and based on the frequency of those reports, we know where it is, we know who the polluters are. So we can close down those beaches and make changes. I said, isn't that interesting? I said, our buyer is a 37-year-old female with 2.5 kids, pushing a cart down the aisle in a supermarket. By that time, we gotten into the supermarkets. How about this? Why don't we put a neck tag on our bottles that says, hang 10 for clean water, and we explain to those moms why this is good for their kids. So imagine the chutzpah here. Don't just give us $6 for this bottle of wine, but give us another $10 to support this worthy cause. Not $2 off with your sausages, not buy one, get one free, but buy the wine and support this cause.
So with that, we were able to help Surfrider Foundation raise hundreds of thousands of dollars because we asked them what they wanted. We talked to the end user, our consumer, found out what they were interested in. We talked to the retail buyer, found out what he was interested in, and that is part of the distribution management that you need to understand to get your product out there. So by asking a lot of questions and being humble, that's how we found that we could be successful. So we were out there, started with nothing, no knowledge and no money. Are there anybody out here that might be thinking the same thing, that you can't take advantage of an opportunity because you don't have enough money or you don't have enough knowledge in the industry? Anybody? Okay. Well, we did it. You can do it too. Thank you.